Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the first class in Kashrut from A to Z. I'm Alan Lieberman. You probably know that already, but if you might as well reintroduce myself to all of you. Thank you all for coming. A lot of times when people are giving speeches, they're told start out with a joke. I choose to go a different route. I've got a passion for writing limericks. So what I like to do now is to share with you a limerick that I wrote for this particular class. And so bear with me, please. Kashrut laws are God-given, both oral Torah and written. Then the rabbis chip in with their interpretation on how they suggest we be living. Thank you. I see nobody left, so I appreciate putting up with that. So let's get started. But before we do, I want to offer a disclaimer. Don't get excited about it. It's not terrible. I'm a mashgiach. A mashgiach by nature, by definition, I mean, is a kosher supervisor, or as I like to call myself, I'm a kosher cop. And I work at I work at a supermarket, but other mashgichim work at restaurants, caterers, retirement homes, nursing homes where they have kosher food. Any facility that has kosher cooking needs to have somebody do the kosher supervision there. And we need to be versed in the laws of kashrut, but not like a rabbi. A rabbi, in order to get ordained as a rabbi, has to take a series of tests, one of which is the laws of kashrut. So they know the laws, and not to say that I don't, but always don't take my word for it. Our work here in this class is to teach, not to resolve, and to inform you, not to decide. So don't make any resolutions or decisions based on what you learn here unless you check with your local rabbi. So that being said, let's talk about what is kosher, what is kashrut. The word kosher is a word that means fit, proper, which makes sense. Kosher, fit, proper, something that's correct. And the laws of kosher, the laws are called the kashrut laws. Kashrut laws refer to the delineation of what the rules are, what the regulations are for a person who is kosher. So they've got guidance on what to do and what not to do. So let's just jump right into this now. What makes food kosher? What makes food kosher? There's a popular opinion that says that a rabbi blesses the food to make it kosher. Not so. The only blessing around kosher is the blessing we say before we eat a meal, where bread is involved, and then after we eat a meal, thanking God before and thanking God after. That's the only blessing. What makes food kosher is basically four things. First thing involves animals. It's what we are allowed to eat and what we're not allowed to eat. And it's very clear, it's given in the Torah where these laws come out. And by the way, there will be a future class which will discuss all of the laws and the rabbinical ordinances, where they come from, exactly where it's written. In this case, the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, is where it tells us what animals we can eat, what animals we can't eat. It comes down to 2 things. A kosher animal must have a split hoof, and it must chew its cud. Not one or the other, both. It tells us what these animals are. So it's very clear as far as that goes. Birds, it delineates 24 species of birds, which are considered kosher. It just so happens that the birds that they list, none of them are carnivores, but nowhere in the Torah does it say that. That is something that somebody came up with one time or another. So these 24 species we are allowed to eat. There's a machlokes or machloket, which is a Hebrew word, which means there's a question about the turkey. So legend has it that in Australia, somebody once saw a turkey eating some carrion. Not to be confused with carry-on luggage, which you're allowed 2 bags to take on a plane. But no, this is carry-on, this is roadkill. They saw a wild turkey eating roadkill, and from that construed that the turkey is a carnivore. So many people, some of whom I actually know, will not eat turkey. I don't know what they do on Thanksgiving, but that's their business. So that's it for the birds. And finally, we have the fish. Fish, 2 requirements. They have to have fins and scales. All fish have fins. That's how they negotiate through the waters or the rivers. Scales come only with kosher fish. There are some fish that have scales when they're young, and when the fish matures, so to speak, the scales drop off. But we know what animals those are, and we're allowed to eat them. The next thing that determines kosher is how the animal is slaughtered. How the animal is killed determines whether it's kosher or not. It has to be done in the kosher fashion, which involves the knife. The knife that's used to slaughter an animal has to be extremely sharp. There could be no nicks or defects in the knife itself, because this makes for a more humane way of killing the animal, where the knife is going to clean cut right across the throat, and pretty much there's no suffering after that. The animal is killed almost within 2 seconds. Third thing is the manufacturing of the food. Companies like Manischewitz, Streitz, Meal Mart, they have their own facilities. They own the buildings where they make all the food. So there, the actual processing of the food, the manufacturing of the food is not a big issue. There has to be a mashgiach there at all times. Same goes for companies. Let's take, for example, apple juice, a company that makes apple juice. The apple juice needs to be pasteurized, and to be pasteurized, it has to pass through pipes, which heat up the apple juice to a certain temperature. Those same pipes may also make clam juice. So somebody has to be there to make sure that when you're doing the what they call the kosher run, that all the equipment has been cleaned down and ready to go. And of course, they also check in the facilities. They check all the ingredients to make sure that everything is kosher as well. The final thing is the preparation of the food. Now, this pertains to our own kitchens, restaurants, catering facilities, wherever there's a kitchen and so kosher food is prepared. There needs to be a mashgiach present at all times. All the equipment, once again, like all the utensils have to be made sure that there's a separation between those used for making milk products and those used for making meat products. We'll get into that in more detail a little bit later. And that all the ingredients are kosher. And so that's the final thing, is the actual preparation of the food. There's a term people use, like in restaurants, is they're kosher style. Kosher is not a style of cooking. When a restaurant advertises kosher style, what they mean is food that's associated with being kosher. Corned beef, lax and bagels. More kosher style is more of an ethnic style, not necessarily it has to do anything with kosher. Food that is not kosher, meat that's not kosher, is called, the Hebrew word is treifa. Treifa means literally torn. The animal cannot have, for example, let's use a chicken, for example. A chicken, you look at the wings and the wings cannot be torn off, nor can they have defects. That's what it means when it means to be treif. The treif animals, I mean, that can make a kosher chicken treif when something is torn. But it generally refers to food like lobster, pork products. That's more likely what treif will refer to. So all of the foods that we eat have those four aspects which make them kosher. Kosher food, whether it's served in a restaurant or bought in a store, has to have a designation on the package that says that it's certified kosher. So let's talk about certification for a moment. The certification word is called hashgacha, Hashgacha. There are probably over 1,500 hashgachas in the world. Most of them are here in the United States because outside of Israel, most of the Jews here live in the United States. There's 5 major agencies that give certification in the United States. There's also many, hundreds and hundreds of, let's call them minor certifications. They all take their lead from the major 5. The major 5 are the OU, the Kof K, Star K, OK, and the CRC. Once again, it's the OU, the Kof K, Star K, OK, and CRC. OU, Kof K, OK, those are all out of New York. The Star K comes from Baltimore. The CRC comes from Chicago, my hometown. And you notice I said Chicago, not Chicago. It's Chicago. I lived there for most of my life, so I should know how to pronounce it. Let's agree about that. All of these major hashgachas have websites where all the information you need can be found on these websites. So all you have to do is just look it up. It's right there. There's also Star K has got a wonderful service. You can call them at any time. Their number is 410-484-4110. That's 410-484-4110. If you're shopping and you see something that's got a hechsher, you've never seen it before, you don't know what it is, you can call up Star K on the spot. They'll tell you whether it's acceptable or not. You can even take a picture of it and send it to them, and they'll tell you right on the spot whether it's good or it's not good. Some foods have certifications on them. In quotes, the certification I'm talking about is the letter K. The letter K in and of itself is not a certification, it's a letter. Usually it means nothing. Sometimes the company's making a product and they realize that there's no non-kosher ingredients. They really don't know this. They're thinking that that's what it is, and they put a K on there. Meaningless. The only time a K has meaning, you have to verify it. The best example I can give you is motels and hotels that have sometimes breakfast where they have a breakfast bar. You get the boxes of cereal, and on those boxes of cereal, there is a K. You can call up the company, call up Kellogg's, call up General Mills, and ask them on the box cereal who issues the K. It's some rabbi who does this. You can find out who it is and then call one of your kosher agencies and get verification that this rabbi is indeed legit and the product is kosher. There are some foods that do not require a kosher certificate. Some of these foods are coffee. The regular decaf does not require a certification. If it's flavored, it has to have a certification because the flavorings can include products that are not kosher. So plain coffee you can buy, you don't even look for the hechsher. Another thing that doesn't require hechsher is pure honey, pure maple syrup. If it's pure, unadulterated, buy it, no problem whatsoever. Extra virgin olive oil does not need a hechsher. All other olive oils do. Extra virgin does not. Certain products like flour, sugar, salt, baking soda, baking powder, these do not require hechshers. Once again, check with your rabbi. Make sure before you go out and buy something like that. Don't take Alan's word for it. Check with the rabbi. Dried spices, dried herbs don't require hechshers. So you're safe there. Now, on certain foods, you're going to have symbols, which are going to give you some guidance. For example, you can, let's say you're buying some cheese. And on the cheese, it says O-U-D. The D is for dairy. Most of the time when we're buying dairy products such as cheese, milk, cottage cheese, sour cream, things like this, we know that they're dairy. We don't need somebody to put a D on a carton of milk to let us know that we're getting dairy kosher food. But sometimes there's a D on a product that you'd be not expecting a D. One of the examples are potato chips. Potato chips, some of them carry dairy ingredients. Candy bars, many candy bars, even if they're not chocolate, have dairy in them. Believe me, I know a lot about potato chips and a lot about candy bars. I've eaten many of them, so I notice all the time. So if you're having a corned beef sandwich and you get a bag of potato chips to eat along with it, make sure that on that bag of potato chips that it does not say D. There's another symbol, which is DE. DE stands for dairy equipment. You know, as I mentioned before, when a apple juice, for example, is being pasteurized, it's being pasteurized through the same pipes that clam juice is being pasteurized. Same with dairy products. Sometimes food is processed in a facility that some of the things are used to manufacture the food are also used for dairy. So you can't just take let's take a pot, for example, that you were cooking macaroni and cheese in. You can't just take that pot, clean it out, and then put something meat in there and expect it to be okay. It's not. You have to wait 24 hours between using a dairy pot. It's not recommended, but sometimes people make mistakes. And in the process of manufacturing, they don't make the mistakes. Usually there's a mashgiach there to check, but the pot may have been used for dairy. The vat may have been used for dairy, and now they're doing something that's meat in there. So the DE, it's not mixing milk and meat, which is what we do not do. But many people who are very machmer, machmer means strict, M-A-C-H-M-E-R. I love the word machmer. I'm machmer. They will not eat dairy equipment and meat together regardless. But for sure, you do not want to have it when you're serving a meal. You do not want to have something that's made in dairy equipment on the same table when you're serving milk. Another symbol you're going to find is Cholav Yisrael, C-H-O-L-A-V or L-O-V, Yisrael. Cholav Yisrael is a concept. It means that there, at all times of the manufacturing of the milk product, that there is a Mashgiach present. I worked for a week at a cheese factory where they manufacture cheese, and this cheese was Cholav Yisrael, which meant that I had to be present from the time the cow was milked until the cheese was actually put into the vat, turned into cheese, compressed into blocks, packaged, and then sent out to where it was going to be further packaged. For the time of the production, a mishgiach always has to be there. This is an old concept. It goes back to the days when farms were not like today. Today they're big, they're fully automated. Back in the day, they had these little mom and pop farms where the chickens and the roosters were running around together, and the pigs and the goats, whatever. And somehow mistakes could have been made where pig milk was mixed with the milk from the cows. It doesn't happen anymore like that because, first of all, you don't have facilities, farming facilities, where that's going on. And second of all, being fully automated, it's really, it would take a great, a very clever, shrewd, twisted person to find a way to throw some pig milk into the cow milk. But Cholav Yisrael, many people still hold by it. There's a spiritual connotation to that. You'd have to ask somebody who holds by the Cholav Yisrael to tell you what that is. But that's there, that's out there, and people will not buy, many people will not buy something, even including a candy bar if it's dairy, unless the dairy is Cholav Yisrael. When it comes to baking, it's required that an oven be turned on by a Jew. That's called Pas Yisrael, or in modern Hebrew, Pat Yisrael. I like to say Pas Yisrael because Pat Yisrael is spelled P-A-T, and people could say, oh no, is this Pat Israel? No, it doesn't sound so good. But this too is an old concept. Nowadays, Pas Yisrael, it'll say on the bread, it'll say on the cakes or cookies, if it is or if it isn't. If it doesn't say, that means it's not. But OU, which is the biggest agency, does not hold by this. The food is still kosher. It doesn't make a difference. The reason for it was being back hundreds and hundreds of years ago when they had these bakeries, you know, nice kosher bakery, and a nice Jewish boy working in a kosher bakery. And this attractive little Gentile girl was working there too, and he may have been busy, and he says, Christina, please turn on the oven. So Christina turns on the oven, and, you know, he's looking at her and becomes attracted to her, and you know what inevitably is going to happen? Social dancing. And once they start doing social dancing, the next thing is, you know, intermarriage. So Pas Yisrael back then was a guideline to keep away the kids were not intermarrying. That's it. Another symbol you've got on food could be parv, P-A-R-E-V-E. Parv simply means neither milk nor meat. Neutral. There's also a P. The P means Pesach, Passover, kosher for Passover. You could find that, it doesn't have to be Passover, you could find that year round on food. And finally, with wine, we have the symbol, the word actually mevushal, M-E-V-U-S-H-A-L. Mevushal means cooked. This too goes way back, hundreds and hundreds of years. But of course, we know a lot of things that we do in Judaism are because of tradition. Mavushal is tradition. The reason for it is as follows. Wine that's not cooked, wine that's not boiled, used to be used by pagans, by non-Jews in idol worship, in their ceremonies that dealt with other gods. And Jews wanted to separate from that. So they wanted to make sure that their wine was cooked so it would not be confused with the wine which is non-mavushal. And even though the concept may be outdated, today in every kosher restaurant I've been in that has a liquor license, they do not have non-mavushal wine. Every event that I've been a mashgiach at where they're serving dinners, they only carry mavushal wine. So that's something to be aware of. In your own house, whatever you do, it's your business. You should talk to your rabbi further about that. It could give you some more information, but that's not the topic of this class here today. So let's talk about some general concepts in the world of kashrut. We do not eat blood. Blood, when the animal is slaughtered, the blood is completely drained. Once the blood's completely drained, it's hosed down, and then it's salted. Salting, whatever blood did not leave, the salting will take care of that. It will draw out whatever blood is left in the animal. We don't eat liver unless that liver has been broiled, because liver, after all, that's what the liver does. It filters the blood. And so the liver has to be broiled in order for it to be kosher before you can cook it. We have to check eggs for blood spots. Very, very, very rare on commercially produced eggs, because the way the chickens are cooped up today, they have no contact with the roosters, and the actual conception is what the blood spot is a product of the blood spot is a product of the conception. So regular eggs do rarely have blood spots. They still need to be checked. I can tell you this, I've been a mashgiach over 10 years. I can't even think, I can't even begin to tell you how many eggs I've checked in that period of time. Once did I find one with a blood spot in it. You got to be real careful though if you buy free range chickens, free range eggs, because they're the chickens are not kept in coops. They could have contact with the roosters, and that could result in having a blood spot in the eggs. So when you check the eggs, they have to be checked individually. Let's say you're making an omelet for your family with 10 eggs in it. You can't crack them all and then look for it. You have to look at each one individually, because if a blood spot gets in one egg, you can't use that egg. If it falls into 10 eggs, 20 eggs, 100 eggs, you can't use it. So each egg has to be checked individually for that. There are parts of the animal, cows specifically, which we do not eat. I'm referring to the hind quarter of the cow. The hind quarter contains the leg contains a sciatic nerve. The sciatic nerve is referred to when Jacob was wrestling with the angel, and the angel gave him a zetz on the leg and caused the pain. That was a sciatic nerve. And in the later class, when we're talking about the origin, derivation of all these kosher laws, I'll get into that. But right now, we just need to know that meat from the hind quarter is not used unless that vein has been removed. It's a very expensive, tedious process, makes the meat very, very expensive. I'm not aware of any place in America where we have that, where they take out the sciatic nerve, but in Israel they do it. The other parts of food that we cannot eat around organs, there's fats. If you're going to eat organs, livers, whatever, as I mentioned before, that the broiled has to be broiled, but also the fat has to be completely removed. Glatt kosher. What is glatt kosher? Every restaurant, kosher restaurant you go into, they'll say glatt kosher. All the meat that you buy in a kosher store is glatt kosher. The word glatt is a Yiddish word. It means smooth. When a cow is slaughtered, they check the lungs on the cow, because that's where, if the cow is sick, carries any diseases, you're going to see some indications in the lungs. One of the indications is that there could be caused a hole in the lung, so a lesion could grow on top of that. So that cannot be used kosher, so that is not glatt kosher. However, there are some lesions that are acceptable. Like, these are the types of the lesions that we look at the cow and there's like a little blemish that you can like flick off with your thumb. That's considered okay. That is still considered glatt. Sephardic Jews, on the other hand, many of them hold by the company, the organization that does the slaughtering, called Beit Yosef, House of Joseph. They do not allow any lesions whatsoever. So if you have a slaughterer in a house where the meat's being checked, sees that, and the person doing the slaughtering is affiliated with Beit Yosef, they will not accept anything with lesions on them. So we also have to know dairy and meat cannot be eaten together at any time in the process. And that comes from early in, I believe it's Leviticus, where it says that you should not see the cow in its mother's milk. From there, we get to the concept where you don't eat meat and dairy together, any type of dairy together. Here in a candy bar with a little bit of whey in there, we don't eat it with a corned beef sandwich. Fruits and vegetables, they're all kosher, nothing unkosher about a fruit or a vegetable, but some of them have bugs, and some of them, and they all need to be checked. Apples, carrots, bananas, oranges, you can see the bugs if they're on there. And it's a very, you can see the hole in the bugs, but I'm talking about, as far as fruit goes, fruits like strawberries, which have leafy greens on top, and raspberries, blackberries, which are not recommended whatsoever. They cannot be checked for bugs, but the strawberries can be checked for bugs. When it gets to vegetables, we're looking at all leafy greens, herbs that have to be checked. And there's going to be another course strictly having to do with with how we do the checking for that. Fish and meat. Once again, an old tradition. At some point, somebody determined that to put meat on the same plate as fish would constitute danger, sarkana. So for that reason, many restaurants are not going to serve meat and fish together. Caterers do not serve meat and fish together. Many people in their own home, if they're having Shabbat dinner and they have a course of gefilte fish, that plate and those utensils are removed, so they're not put on the same plate as meat, fish and meat. And finally, we have to know that when we're using meat products, we have to have our own silverware, our own pots, our own pans, our own serving pieces. When we're serving dairy, we need to have our own silverware, our own pots, our own pans, our own dishes to separate one from the other. So now I have to look for my little thing here. That pretty much ends tonight's discussion. But I like to end every session with a little section called Did You Know? So today we're not going to deal with something directly involved with kashrut, but we're doing something about what's called gematria. Gematria is numerology. Numerology is where you take numbers, and from those numbers of a word, you come to certain conclusions. In Hebrew, gematria means that every letter in Hebrew has a numerical equivalent. And those numerical equivalents, each letter you add up and it comes to a certain amount. For example, kashrut. The numerical equivalent of kashrut is 926. And 9 plus 2 plus 6 is 1117. So the concept of gematria is that when you have two words that have the same numerical equivalent, there can be a connection. I'm saying there can be a connection. Gematria is not the be-all, the end-all. It's sometimes used as a tool of teaching. But in this case, we're going to use it for the following. As I mentioned, kashrut is 92617. The word for good in Hebrew is also 17. So that leads us to the conclusion that kosher is good. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you all enjoyed it. Next week, there will be no class because it's Shavuot, but I will be informing you the week after when it starts and all that. And please, everybody who's watching this, if you would like me to send you a copy, a recording of each event, of each class, I will be happy to do so. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Everybody be well. Thank you.